All right, welcome back. I'm Robert Breaker, and we're continuing our verse-by-verse Bible study through the epistles of Paul in order of when they were written. Last time we finished up 2 Timothy chapter 2. And boy, it took a while to get through that chapter, but boy, there's a lot of stuff in 2 Timothy chapter 2. Verse 15 was one study all by itself. And then verse 16, we did one study all by itself. And so it took us a while to get through chapter 2, but today we're going to start in chapter 3 of 2 Timothy. We're getting close. We've got chapter 3 and then chapter 4, and we'll have finished the epistles of Paul except for Hebrews. And we will continue our verse-by-verse Bible study with Hebrews. And I've done that on purpose. Many people believe that Hebrews was written before, and I think it was, but I'm going to tie that all in together when we get to chapter 4. So we're going to start today on 2 Timothy chapter 3. I like to call this chapter Paul's prophecy of the last days. A lot of people, I've known people before that say, well, Paul never gave any prophecy. And I'm like, what? What? Let me write this up here. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about this, the last days. And Paul is telling us here about what is going to happen in the last days. So I've heard people say, you know, Paul never wrote prophecy. He just wrote some things that God told him to write. And they say that after Paul, there's no prophecy in the Bible. I have a hard time swallowing that because we have after Paul, there was a guy named John, and John wrote the book of Revelation, and the book of Revelation has a lot of prophecy of the last times in it. Now after John, when the close of the New Testament was closed, I don't think we have any more prophecy then. I think we have everything we need in the Bible, and we go to the Scriptures for that. But Paul, yes, I believe Paul has written us some. Let me write this up here, Armageddon. I believe Paul has written some prophecy. So I call this passage here of 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul's prophecy. Now, you remember from our study, if you've been watching and going with us verse by verse, God gave Paul some mysteries. So there are some mysteries that God revealed to Paul, at least 7 of them, 7 mysteries. God gave Paul some revelations. So God revealed some things to the Apostle Paul. Well, I also believe that God gave Paul some prophecies. And this is one of the things that God gave to the Apostle Paul. It starts out there in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. And then he goes on and tells you exactly what men will be like in the last days. Verse 2, for men shall be. And he gives a list of what man will be like in the last days. Now, if that's not prophecy, I don't know what it is. He's telling you, I'm prophesying, God's telling me to prophesy and tell you that in the last days, men are going to be like this. And he gives you a list. Now, we know that in the last days, there's a time of apostasy. But what Paul is talking about here when he says in these last days this is going to happen, I'm going to include all the way out here to Armageddon. I'm going to include this from the apostasy of the church before the rapture all the way out to Armageddon when Jesus sets up his millennial kingdom. I'm going to call this the last days. And I'm going to show you this list of what Paul says men will be like in the last days. And we see men acting like that from starting now, before the rapture, how men are like today, all the way out to the end of the tribulation. This is how men are. And it's horrible. It's horrible. Sure, men have been evil and wicked throughout history, but I think in these last days, men are going to be worse than any other time in history in the way that they treat others and the way they act and the things that they do. Because men will be so depraved in the tribulation period, they'll literally be eating one another and murdering one another, and they have no concern or love for anyone. And it's just going to be a horrible, horrible, depraved time. And we're starting to see that depravity right now before the rapture. But it's going to get even worse in the tribulation period. So we're going to look at these last days. Now before I start reading here what Paul says, I thought what I would do for fun is first give you the words of Jesus, what Jesus says will happen in the last days. Then I'm going to give you the words of Peter, what Peter says will happen in the last days. Then I'm going to go to John and tell you what John said is going to happen in the last days. Then we're going to go look at Paul. Because Jesus, Peter, John, Paul all tell us, in the last times, in the last days, in this time period, at the end of the church age and of the tribulation, this is what the world is going to be like. And what they say that the world is like is scary. Now, when I read these, I'm going to read these passages to you of what they say the world's going to be like during this time period. You tell me. I still get emails from people that say, oh, there's 20 years left before Jesus comes. Oh, we're not in the last days. There's 100 years before the rapture. And I go, goodness, do you not see? Do you not see? I still get people that say, I don't think so. And I think, do you not see that we are in the last days? We are already in this time of apostasy, and we're already seeing things happen that Jesus said, that Peter said, that Paul said, and John said. So I'm going to start with Jesus, then we'll come back to 2 Timothy chapter 3. But they asked Jesus, let's go to Matthew chapter 24, and they asked Jesus, what will things be like before you come back? Now, Jesus wasn't talking about the rapture, he was talking to the Jews, so when they were asking him what's things going to be like, the Armageddon is when Jesus comes back for the Jews. But we can also, because these are so close together, the tribulation is only 7 years long, so there's 7 years from here to the rapture, and 10, 20, 30, 50 years here? I mean, this is a very close time period compared to the rest of the history of the Bible. So, when Jesus is answering of what's going to happen, he's really talking about the tribulation, but because it's only 7 years, we're already starting to see that things are beginning to be like this. So we're seeing the beginning of how bad things are going to get in the tribulation. We're starting to see it now. So let's go to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3. I'm going to read from verse 3 down to verse 12. Matthew chapter 24, starting in verse 3 all the way to verse 12. Verse 3, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, who's this? Jesus. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So basically they say, Jesus, what's going to happen in the end of the world? What's going to happen in the last days? What's it going to be like right before your coming? Well, we are right before the coming of Jesus. Now, remember, they have the first coming of Jesus and the second coming. We call it the first advent and the second advent. The first advent, or the first coming of Jesus, was when he was born. So we have the birth of Christ. And then Jesus was buried, rose again the third day. And when he rose again, he went up to heaven, and then he came back down for 40 days. So there's two parts to the first coming of Jesus Christ. The first part was when he was born, and the second part was he came back down before he went up. And we call that first coming of Jesus the first advent. Alright, so the first advent has two parts. Oops, I wrote one there again. That should be two. So the two parts of the first advent was Jesus coming to be born. Then after he rose from the dead, he went up to heaven, and he came back. Stay down here for 40 days, and then the Bible says that in Acts chapter 1, he rose back up in the clouds up into heaven. So the first advent, or the first coming of Jesus, has two parts. Well, the second advent of Jesus has two parts. Part number one is the rapture. At the second advent, Jesus comes at the rapture and takes out the church. And then at the second part of the second advent is Armageddon. So each time that Jesus comes, it comes in two parts, or two stages. So the first advent, there's two parts. The second advent is two parts. So that's why a lot of people say that Matthew 24 includes the rapture. I don't think it does. I think Matthew chapter 24, he's talking to Jews, and the rapture hadn't been revealed yet, because we know that Paul said it's a mystery that God revealed to him, the mystery of the rapture. So I think that literally in Matthew 24, Jesus is speaking about the things that are going to take place in the tribulation. But what's interesting, some of the things he says, we can say are really taking place just right before the tribulation, because we're starting to see those things take place now. And I believe we're a year or 2 or 3 from the rapture at the most. So we're going to start seeing these things that Jesus is talking about in Matthew 24 right now, right before the tribulation. So I hope you get that. So Matthew chapter 24, verse 3, they ask him, what shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Well, when Jesus comes again in the second advent, there's 7 years between the two comings. So what we're going to see as we look at what the prophecy is of how things will be in the last days, the things gradually changed into this. So we can see the gradual change even before the rapture. We can see these things starting to take place. I hope you see what I'm saying. So here in verse 4, and Jesus answered and said unto him, take heed that no man deceive you. All right, so before Jesus comes, there's going to be a great what? Deception. A great deception in the world. There'll be people lying left and right trying to deceive you. Turn on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, and all you see is what they call nowadays fake news. It's made up lies, all to put forth a false agenda in the hopes that you'll believe what they're saying, and it's not true. It's deception. We're already seeing that deception today. It's really sad. But he says here, take heed that no man deceive you. Verse 5, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. There will be many people in the last days that try to say, well, I am Jesus. I just got off the phone here a couple days ago, and I talked to Jesus Christ on the phone. Yes, I did. A guy called me up and said, hi, I am the Christ, I am the Messiah, I'm Jesus. I just want to tell you this, that's, and the other thing. And I'm thinking, I said, honey, I'm talking to Jesus right now. He just called me up out of the blue. And the guy said, well, that's all I want to say, bye, and he hung up. There's a bunch of weirdos in the world today, a bunch of wackos, a bunch of crazies. And so I literally spoke to Jesus Christ on the phone. Now, it wasn't the true Jesus, it was a crazy guy. And as the Bible says, for many will come in my name saying, I am Christ. We're already starting to see this. I'm seeing it firsthand. People are calling me up on the phone and saying that they're Jesus, that they're the Christ. Verse 6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Well, we're seeing that today. North Korea wants to explode and blow up America. Now, Russia wants a war with America. All these countries want to fight Iran. And we're hearing about all these. And it doesn't take a genius to look at the world and the state of the world today and say, wow, we are very close to World War III. The world is just about to go to war. This is exactly how they felt before World War II started. Before my grandmother died, my grandmother told me, she says, I see what's going on in the world today. She goes, less than 5 years there's going to be another war. Well, she died 1.5 years ago. So she said, because I feel it. I feel what I felt when I was a kid when World War II came. The world is the same way. And she just, something that you can't really put your finger on, but it's a feeling, but also you're seeing every day the news of just how bad it is, and you're like, yep, the world's going to go to war soon. It's sad, but it's coming. And there's wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Verse 7, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. Now, if you're following the news, there have been so many earthquakes in the last couple of years. It's insane. But Jesus is talking about what will take place in the tribulation. So all the earthquakes that are taking place today must be nothing compared to what it'll be like in the tribulation. There must be a lot more. But we're already starting to see a lot of earthquakes. 8, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. Verse 9, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. We're seeing that today. Many people that claim to be followers of Jesus are being killed, beheaded by ISIS and other evil organizations. The United Nations has come out and had to admit that the worst persecution in the world is toward Christians today. Now it says here, verse 10, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Look at that. Many shall be offended. I look at what's happening in America today, and all I hear from these snowflakes, from these crazy, crazy people, is political correctness. Oh, you got to talk right. You got to speak the way we say so you don't offend us. The Bible says many shall be offended. That's looking around. Yep, that's the day we live in today. People walk around with a chip on their shoulder just waiting for you to say something they don't want to hear so they can get offended and say, you bigot, you sexist, you racist. They just can't wait to be offended. That's somebody who's mentally unstable and unbalanced, by the way. But that's the world we live in. It's people that just get offended over the smallest things. Why, it's almost like Jesus knew what he was talking about. He says, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Well, yeah, that's the world we live in. People running around saying, I don't like you, and you're not like me, and you're full of hate, and you're this, and you're... It's exactly like Jesus said. Verse 11, and many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. Yep. Now verse 12, and because iniquity shall abound, what is iniquity? Sin. But we are seeing a day and age in which there's more sin than any other time in history. It's disgusting. Because iniquity shall abound because of so much sin, the love of many shall wax cold. So we're living in the last days in a time of deception, and Jesus says the love of many, I'll see if I got run up here, shall wax cold. Now what does that mean, wax cold? That means there will be way less love in the world today than there's ever been. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing very, very, very little love of human beings toward other human beings today. Nobody loves anybody anymore. They're so full of hate. And it's sad. Where's the love? Well, the love of many has truly waxed cold. I get people call me and email me all the time and tell me, what's wrong with the world? I mean, family doesn't even love each other anymore. And people attacking each other and ridiculing and putting people down. And they're just, what is happening, Brother Breaker? Well, prophecy is being fulfilled. People don't love each other anymore. They're full of hate. They're full of this and that and the other thing. Just as Jesus prophesied. Now, let's go to 2 Peter. And let's look at what Peter said. Because in 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 3, here Peter gives us a prophecy. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 3. What does Peter say about the last days? 2 Peter 3:3 says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lusts. So there will be people that go around scoffing. They're scoffers. And they're full of their own lusts. What does that mean? That means they're so full of lust that all they think about is sex and the flesh. And they go around and they think about how they want to do this in the flesh and do that in the flesh. And then they make fun of anybody that doesn't like what they're doing. Kind of like your transgender people. Well, you can't call me a he or she, I'm an it. And they get upset if you don't accept their ungodly lifestyle, which is a lifestyle of lusting after other things, and then they mock and ridicule and make fun of you if you claim you're a Christian. So truly, the Bible is true. I mean, this is probably one of the greatest things to prove that the Bible is true. The fact that the prophecy prophesied of what it'll be like in the last days, and we are seeing to a T exactly as Jesus, Peter, John, and Paul said that life would be like and the world would be like. That's exactly what it's like today. Exactly. And we haven't even gotten started. Now let's go to John. Let's go to 1 John chapter 2 and verse 18. This is where it starts to get scary. If all we did was just read this part, then we'd realize, yeah, the world's like that. Yeah, it's true. But the question is, why is the world so bad? Why is there no love? Why is there so much lust in the world? Why are there so many scoffers? Why are there so many just vile, wicked, evil people that are trying to deceive others? Well, the answer is because there's seducing spirits in the world. There's demons that are going around deceiving people. And they're called Antichrist. And in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 18, the Apostle John says, little children, it is the last time. And as you have heard that Antichrist shall come, well, we know that the Antichrist, the Antichrist, will come in the tribulation. But he says, you know that in the tribulation the Antichrist is coming. But look what he says. He says, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. So before the Antichrist shows up, before that, there's going to be many Antichrists. What is an Antichrist? Someone that is against Jesus Christ and his teachings in the Bible. What makes them an Antichrist is because they are seducing spirits. They are of devils, basically. And they're following devils, and devils hate Christ. So what you will see more and more of in the last days before the rapture is more demonic possession. More demons going around deceiving people and possessing people and manifesting through people. And that's a scary thought, but more and more demonic influence will be in the world because the Antichrist rules, and he's Satan, the king of all the demonic spirits. And he's going to have his kingdom. So he's already getting his demons out there preparing the world for his kingdom. So demonic influence will be around the world, and we're starting to see that today. Things like Pokemon. I don't know if you know what Pokemon is, but it's this little game in your little computer or your little phone that you can go around and supposedly you can see these little demonic creatures. Pokemon stands for pocket monsters. It ought to stand for demonic entities, but they call them pocket monsters, and you can supposedly go play this game and look, and supposedly you can see where these little monsters are all over the world. Well, I think personally they're probably demons. So you're running around chasing demons, and that's the last days. That's many antichrists are all over. Now, what does Paul say? Let's go to Paul, and let's go to 1 Timothy 4. This is one other place, 1 Timothy 4, 1 through 2. And then we're going to go back to 2 Timothy 3 and read some more. But in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, Paul says, "Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times," okay, last days, "some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron." So there will be evil, seducing spirits. And those spirits will go around lying. But they will also sear your conscience. In other words, they will get you to sin so much and do so much evil and so much wickedness that you won't even feel bad when you do wrong. In these last 30, 40, 50 years, there have been the most egregious, vile, filthy, wicked, most reprobate crimes that have ever happened in humanity, of people that are committing such heinous acts that they do most horrible things you can imagine, and they don't even feel bad about it. People that go out and murder people and then eat their bodies, eat their flesh. People that go out and molest dead bodies and do just the most horrible, unspeakable acts. And they're captured by the police, and they're put in jail, and they're put on trial, and they just sit there with a smile on their face. They don't feel bad about it. Their conscience is seared, and the judges are like, "What do you think he would?" No, I enjoy it. That's someone that has a seducing spirit. That one is someone that has a demon inside of them that is making them do wrong, and they've gone so far down the wrong path that they don't even feel bad anymore. And that's the last days. That's the time in which we live. And their conscience is seared with a hot iron. So here we have Jesus, Peter, John, and Paul telling us about what life's going to be like in the last days. And boy, I tell you, everything they say sounds exactly like the day and age in which we live, pointing to the fact that we must be in the last days. So now we go back to 2 Timothy chapter 3. And what we have here in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 all the way down to verse 7 or 8, is we have a list from the Apostle Paul of what the world will be like before the rapture. And when I look at this list and I read this thing over and over and over, I see the modern day liberal, the modern day progressive, the modern day Democrat, or the modern day homosexual, or the modern day Satanist. I clearly see the agenda of the Democratic, progressive, socialist, communist left. I cannot help but see that's exactly who they are. Now, the United States of America was founded way back in about 1776 or so, and then they had to fight a war to get their freedom. And after time of being set up as a nation, they eventually were two parties, the Democrats. Oh no, wait, the Democrats. Excuse me, Democrats. Wait, demons, seducing spirits are demons. Democrats. Huh? That's a good name for them, Democrats. And the Publicans. Oh, excuse me. Republicans. Yeah, publican is a sinner. The Republicans. I guess that means they're really bad sinners. So you have two huge political parties within the United States of America, and people say, well, which one are you, a Democrat or a publican? Are you the sinner or are you the one that's demon-possessed? Are you a Democrat or a Republican? And people don't even understand that those terms mean nothing nowadays. There's really no difference between a Democrat and Republican. They're really the same thing. They just are different in name only. But the Democratic Party, when it started, it was the party of the slave owners. And supposedly it was the party of the Christians. Well, the Democratic Party supposedly was the party that wanted freedom for people to do their own thing and the government to get out of their lives. The Republican was the party that wanted a strong central government that controlled people. Those parties, over time, completely switched. I mean, they completely swap sides. Many people don't realize that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Today, if you're an American, and usually if you're a black person, the Democratic Party tells you, oh, you need to be a Democrat if you're black because the Democrats care about black people. All right, is that true? Let me look at history. The slave owners were the Democrats. And the Democrats said, Republicans are evil, the Republicans are the slave owners. It was Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, that wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. So people today, they don't study, they don't understand, they don't look at politics. Because if they did, how could you be a black person and be a Democrat? Knowing that the Democrat was the party of the slaveholders. It doesn't make much sense. So people don't study. But if you do study the Democratic Party today is a party that has been taken over by leftists, by communists, and even by, I guess we could call them progressive liberal Satanists. Several years ago in the Democratic Party, this is 2017 as I do this video, I remember watching the Democratic National Convention on TV. And I remember watching the Democratic National Convention vote on the floor to take out the name of God from any future dealings in the Democratic National Convention. So the Democratic National Convention says we do not want God mentioned in anything we do ever again. Now, how a person can be a Christian and then claim to be a Democrat, I don't know. When the Democrats do not want God or the Bible. They have literally voted God out of their party entirely. It's weird. But that's not all. The Democratic Party is the party that communists, socialists, progressives, homosexuals, and Satanists flock to. And why would I say that? Well, because if you begin to study each one of those, you find out that each one of those are against God and the Bible. So basically, it could be argued, not that I'm saying this, but it could be argued that if you hate God and the Bible, then you are a Democrat. Because that's the party that you want to be in, because that's the party that doesn't like God and the Bible, and they openly kick God out. And you start to look at politics and ask people, what are you, a Democrat or a Republican? And they are Satanists, or they are homosexuals, or they are liberals, or they are progressive, or they are socialist ideals. Then the thing they'll say is, I'm a Democrat. So most Christians, they think, well, that means I need to get to the opposite extreme. I'm a Republican. Okay, what do the Republicans believe in? Well, the Republicans are about the same. They might be a little different, but the Republican is the warmongering party. It seems like the Republicans are the ones that always start wars. I don't know why that is. So I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. I like to call myself a libertine. I just believe in liberty. I don't want to join a party and become part of a group, because then you start fighting among yourself. The Bible says a house divided against itself shall not stand. And Satan's plan is to get a nation divided to where they fight one another. So I don't like either one. I'm glad that there are some good people within the Republican Party. But at one time, the Republican Party was conservative. Not every Republican is a conservative. In fact, many Republicans are not conservatives. Now, this guy named Trump that became president, he ran on the principles of being a conservative. And so he pretty much hijacked the Republican Party and tried to bring back conservative principles to it. And that's why you see that so many Republicans are against their own Republican candidate, Donald Trump, because they are Republican in name only. And it's funny that today they have a saying, they call you a rhino. Rhino stands for Republican in name only. And so if you claim to be a Republican, but yet you don't do anything that a Republican conservative would do, then that's a nickname. I just think it's so interesting that when you follow politics and you're a Christian and you look at the Bible, it's very clear. I can't be a Republican or I can't be a Democrat. Because I see within both of those parties people that are getting as far away from God and the Bible as they can. And what they call the Republican Party today has so many things within it that as a Christian, I just can't be a part of. I just don't want to be a part of. I see things that are just like, that's not God in the Bible. So party politics is all about division. And the Bible says a house divided against itself shall not stand. Well, unfortunately, politics has taken and divided America into two different sanctions, two different parties. And now it's inevitably has to fall because it's divided. It's not united anymore. And it's crazy because you look at the currency and the money says e pluribus unum. United we stand. The United States of America is called the United States. They should be united. What should they be united on? The Bible and God. When America was founded, it was founded on God. The founding documents of the United States of America say, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. Created, what does that mean? Creation, God, the Creator. And endowed with inalienable rights. And that the Creator, the God of creation, they invoked God. Even to this day, 2017, even though America has turned as a whole against God, the money in the United States of America says, in God we trust. So the uniting factor of the United States of America, the thing that united God, the whole country, was God and the Bible. All the founding fathers, every one of them, they might not have called themselves a believer in Christ or a Christian, but they all said, I am at least a deist. I don't know if it's I-E-S-T, deist, I forget which way. I think it's E-I-S-T. A deist is someone who believes in God. The founding fathers believed that there is God and that the Bible is God's book. And they all agreed that the way to have a government is to have morals. And they said without a moral people, you can never have a foundation of a good government. Morality or morals. Morality. You have to live a moral life. What has happened in the United States of America is they have kicked out God and they've kicked out the Bible. And by so doing, they got rid of morals. And what we are seeing today is the rise of immorality. And what we're seeing today in America is people priding themselves on how sinful they are. And the more sinful, wicked, vile, and ungodly you are, the more the government praises you and helps you and says you're a great person. That's the exact opposite of the way things used to be. When the country was founded, the more moral, the more honest a person was, the more that person was praised and exalted as a good person. Now it's the more immoral you are, the more you fornicate, the more you adulterate, the more you commit abortion and kill your babies, the more you attack Christians and lie and steal and cheat, the more they look at you as wow, that guy's really awesome. Look how great a person he is because of all that stuff that he or she has done. So that is the problem with the world today. Now, with that stated, let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 3. You see, if you don't have a moral society, then society will fall apart. And it will end up like that old famous book, The Lord of the Flies, where people are just going around killing each other and eating each other and murdering each other. Society falls when there's no morals. God and the Bible preach morality. So when you look to God and you look to the Bible and you become a moral person, then you won't have perilous times. But when you kick out God and the Bible, that's when life becomes perilous. That's when it's dangerous to live, because that's when you're living around dangerous people that don't care about you, whose consciences are seared with a hot iron, who are filled with demons and are going around and just living however they want and doing whatever they want. That kind of person will not respect you or your property. And so now you're stuck living in a society full of evil, wicked people that are just looking at you thinking, how can I get something from him? How can I steal from him? How can I abuse him? How can I put him down? So that's why Paul says in 2 Timothy 3:1, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Perilous times. What is perilous? Perilous is dangerous. We are living in dangerous, dangerous days. You go out of your house, you go to the store, you're thinking, man, everything's fine. You could get killed before you get home. There's suicide bombers blowing themselves up. There's people with guns shooting people. There's people all over that are doing evil. There's gang members all over America that go around, and part of being their gang is cutting off someone's finger. I mean, you take it for granted a lot of times that you go to town and come back and nothing happens, but you ought to thank God every time you leave the house and you get back safely that you're okay. Because times are getting worse and worse, and before the rapture comes, they will continue to get worse and worse and worse. Why? Well, Paul tells us why. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Why will there be perilous times? Why will life be dangerous in the last days? Paul says, for this reason. For men shall be lovers of their own selves. Now I'm going to read this whole passage here in a minute, but I want to say that this chapter, chapter 3, shows us the heart, the mind, and the methods of the modern day liberal, progressive, socialist, communist, Democrat, Satanist, homosexual. It shows you not only what they are, but how they operate. You see, we live in a day and age where evil people have looked around and they said, you know what? We can be evil, and we can do more evil by joining ourselves to politics. And we can take over politics, and then we can force our evil on other people. And that's the world we live in which very dangerous, evil, wicked people want to force you to be like them. And what that does is that forces out Christians. Christians have no place in a society like that because Christians say, I don't want to do evil. I don't want to do wrong. But when the world becomes so vile and so wicked, you become an affront to them. You're a reproach to them. You're a thorn in their flesh. They see you as a righteous person. They say, I don't like that guy because he's not like me. And he makes me feel bad just looking at him because he doesn't do what I do. And it will always end up in which the vile, wicked, filthy reprobate will say, the only way I can tolerate this is if you're dead. And it will always lead to the most vile and most wicked killing and murdering the innocent. And history proves that. You go back to the old Roman Empire. Paul's going around, he's preaching, he's starting a great ministry of preaching the gospel, and people are getting saved. What did the Romans do? They said, these Christians are horrible. Put them in the Colosseum, burn them at the stake, feed them to the lions, kill them, because we can't put up with this. What did the Christians do? Were they out trying to start riots in the street? Were they trying to overthrow the government? No. They were living holy, righteous lives and just trying to keep to themselves and do right. And the sinful, wicked world said, no, I can't take that. I can't take anyone being better than me. They wanted everyone to be corrupt so that they didn't feel bad for their sin. You see, someone that's a sinful, wicked person, when they see someone that's not as bad as them, they want that person to be as bad as them so that then they don't feel bad. You see, when you see someone doing right and you're doing wrong, your conscience begins to prick you. And you get to say, man, I ought to do what that guy's doing. I ought to live right because that's what he's doing. So a sinful person will ultimately and always end up as a very mean, very vile person who not only just hates others, but will always end up attacking others and trying to harm other people. That's ultimately what will happen. You say, well, I don't believe that. Okay, look at people that are mentally insane. When a person becomes mentally insane, they become mentally unstable. And they become harmful not only to themselves, but to others. So a person that has gone past their conscience, has no limits, cannot control themselves, that kind of person is a person that you're afraid of, you're scared of. And they'll do just whatever, and they'll just hurt themselves, they'll cut themselves. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that demons do. If a person starts cutting their body and cutting their flesh, that's a sign that they have a demon, because demons cut them. They love to torment the person that they're in. And so if a person starts out being like that, then eventually they'll want to hurt others. So do you see why important it is to have a moral society where people are learned to respect others and treat others kindly? Because if you don't have that, then you will have people become so evil and so sinful that they just want to go out and attack and hurt others. And the innocent people will be the ones getting hurt. And that's what we're beginning to see in this society we live in today, is that the evil persecute the good. So, these verses here in chapter 3 show us what the modern day vile, reprobate, evil people are like. What are they like? They are full of devils, chapter 2 and verse 26. The verse before chapter 3. That they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil who are taken captive by him at his will. The devil takes captive people. The more sinful a person is, the more a demon has access into entering into their lives. And if a person gives into the flesh so much that they get a seducing spirit, that kind of person will be demon-possessed. What do demons do? Demons live to torture other people. So if you live in a society where people are allowed to become so evil that they get a demon, then that kind of a person lives just to delight in hurting other people. And that's a horrible and a perilous and dangerous society. Another thing we see here in chapter 3 is that these people are full of evil. Verse 1 through 4, I'll read here in a minute, shows that their heart is just so full of pure evil. So we have to watch out for people that are evil. Verse 5 says they have a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. Also in verse 13, but evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. So they hate God. Verse 3, it says, despisers of those that are good. So what we're seeing in this chapter is we're seeing what I call today the modern day progressive, liberal, Democrat, Satanist, communist, socialist. They all have one thing in common. They're all full of evil and sin. They all hate God and good. They all seek to enslave. Notice verse 6. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with lust, led away with diverse lusts, laden with sins. They creep into houses to lead people captive. You see, what they want is they want people to do what they say. This attitude of, look how great I am and I'm the best and everyone ought to bow down to me, leads to a person wanting worship and leading to a person becoming a control freak. And now they want to push their beliefs on others and then tell people you're no good unless you do what I say, and it puffs people up with pride. That's the most dangerous person in the world, someone that is vile, wicked, and loves power, and now wants to enslave you to them so that they can mistreat you and treat you like garbage. But that's what this kind of crowd does. They also seek to deceive. Verse 8 talks about Jannes and Jambres. They were of corrupt minds, and they resisted the truth. And also there in verse 13, they're deceived and being deceived. So they are people that have been deceived by what they believe. They also are corrupt in their minds and reprobate. Verse 8, it says they are reprobate concerning the faith. They seek to seduce others and to deceive. And they also want to persecute others. Verse 11 and 12. He talks about, yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. Why does a person that just tries to do right, why does he suffer persecution? Because people that do wrong scoff and make fun of people that do right. Have you ever heard someone call you a goody two-shoes? People that are sinful and wicked and ungodly and hate God and the Bible and love themselves, what do? They make fun of people that try to live a Christian life. And they say, you're just a this and you're this. And they mock and they ridicule and they persecute Christians. So let's begin here by reading what is the mind of the modern day liberal. I'm going to call these people what they are. Paul gives us in this chapter the mind of the modern day liberal or the modern day progressive. What is a progressive, by the way? The term progressive, a progressive is someone who doesn't believe in the Constitution and they want to overthrow the Constitution of the United States of America. That's the easiest definition of a progressive. They hate the Constitution. Why do they hate the Constitution? Because the Constitution says we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and given by God certain unalienable rights. A progressive hates God and the Bible. One of the biggest progressives in the world that ever existed was this guy that wrote Rules for Radicals. His name was Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was a progressive, and he wrote the book Rules for Radicals. And in the first page of the book, he says, I dedicate this book to Lucifer. So what was he? He's a Luciferian. He's a Satanist. Progressives love Satan and hate God. So they hate the liberty that's given us by the Constitution, because the Constitution invokes God and says God gives all men the right to do certain things. So liberals, progressives, Satanists, communists. What is a communist? Communist is someone who hates God. Because a communist says the state is God. So they don't want a true God, the Creator. They want the government to be their God. Socialist. What's a socialist? Someone who does not like God and the Bible. And they want they want the world to follow the world. It's like mob rule, really. So Satanist, homosexual, all the crowd that's pretty much in the modern day Democratic Party. How about that? So what does the Bible say about these people? Who are they, and why are they the way they are? All right, so chapter 3 and verse 1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. All right, we're going to be in dangerous days in these last days before the rapture. Why, Paul? Verse 2, for men shall be lovers of their own selves. Now, what does it mean to be a lover of your own self? If you are a lover of your own self, what are you going to be? Selfish. Now, here's something that I've heard this years ago an old preacher say, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody else say this. If you take the word flesh, sometimes in the English language the H is silent. So let's pretend that the H is silent, and let's change your way. Let's do backwards the word flesh. What does it come out to? S-E-L-F. Self. So self backwards is flesh, or flesh backwards is self, if the H is silent. Isn't that something? A person that only thinks about themselves and is selfish, what is the only thing that's important to them? Their own flesh. And they care less about anyone or anything. It's all about them. So a person that is a lover of their own self is a selfish person that doesn't care. Is there anyone more selfish than a Satanist? The Satanist doctrine is, do as thou wilt. Do whatever your flesh desires. That's the creed of Satanism. It's selfish. It's pure, unabashed selfishness. Is there anyone more selfish than a communist or a socialist or a progressive or a liberal? It's all about them doing their own thing. He says, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, so they'll be selfish. Covetous. What is covetous? Well, covetous is to be lustful or desiring more. A person that is covetous is someone that says, I want more, give me more. And they're never satisfied with what they have. Like a selfish person, a socialist, communist, Satanist, progressive, liberal. They always go, more, give me more. That's really sad. So a covetous, selfish person. Then it says boasters. What's a boaster? Someone that brags, someone that goes around bragging about how great they are. The Bible says we're not supposed to brag. If we do boast, if we do brag, we should brag on Jesus. We should always look to Him and say, Jesus is so great, Jesus is so wonderful, Jesus is so good because He saved me, He gave me salvation, He gave me a place in heaven. And it should all be bragging about Jesus. It should not be about us. But that's the problem. Christianity, it's all about sacrificing the flesh and putting others before yourself. Satanism is put others down and put yourself first. To hell with everybody else. The love of many wax cold. Satanism is all about me first, you next, maybe. So Satanist or socialist or communism, it's all about don't sacrifice for others, don't do what others want, just worry about getting what you can for yourself. Proud. Well, there we go. Prideful. Now, what does the Bible say about pride? You go back to the book of Job. In the book of Job, toward the end of the book, it's talking about Leviathan. And Leviathan is Satan. And then it says about Satan, about Leviathan, it says he is the king over all the children of pride. Satan is the king of all people that are prideful. The most prideful people in the world is this crowd. The homosexuals run around. Who are homosexuals, by the way? Well, the majority of them are liberals, communists, socialists, Satanists, progressives, selfish people. The homosexuals have what they call gay, guess what the next word is? Pride. I am so proud that I engage in sexual, lustful practices in the flesh. I am proud that I'm a sodomite and I commit sodomy. What is that? It's a prideful person. And they're lumped in with this crowd that are Satanists. The Antichrist, the Bible says he has not the love of woman. So the Antichrist is a homosexual. Now, if you're a homosexual, that's your business. I'm not attacking you. I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying that someone who is a homosexual brags on themselves and says, hey, I have gay pride. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a gay. Okay, the Bible says watch out for that. Watch out for people that are proud and boasters. Then the next verse says blasphemers. Blasphemers. What is a blasphemer? Someone that makes fun of God. Now, I don't go to gay parades or things like that, but I've seen some on YouTube. And it's amazing to me that every time that I see a picture or a little video of a gay parade, they're always mocking and making fun of Jesus Christ. Sometimes they'll dress up like Jesus with a crown of thorns and have a little cross and they run around. They're blaspheming God. Now, if they want to go do their little homosexual thing, that's fine. Why do they always have to attack God when they do it? That doesn't make much sense unless the guy behind all that is probably a seducing spirit. You see, spirits, they're called seducing spirits. Seducing is what someone does to get you to do a sexual act in the flesh. They're seducing you. Blasphemers. Now look what it says here. Disobedient to parents. Oh, that's where it all starts. The Bible says that one of the 10 commandments that's with promise is the commandment to obey your parents, that your days may be long upon the earth. If you obey your parents, God promises in the Bible that you'll live a longer life than if you disobeyed your parents. But yet today, what do they tell people? Oh, your parents are a bunch of fuddy-duddy, moron, idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. Just do whatever you want. It's your life. Do what thou wilt is the whole law. Have a good time. Don't listen to your parents. No. It just seems like everything that this crowd pushes today is against God and the Bible. Disobedient to parents. Unthankful. What does it mean to be unthankful? To be ungrateful. To not thank somebody. When I was a kid, I was always taught when someone does you a favor or does something for you, you always say thank you. And to show that you're grateful. Because an ungrateful person is somebody that's scorned and looked down upon in society because that's bad. Today, no. If we're taught from an early age, don't ever say thank you. Be ungrateful. Be unthankful. Then it says unholy. What does that mean? It means dirty. Holy means clean. Cleanliness. Separated. So to be unholy is to not be clean. Now, verse 3, without natural affection. Well, here we go. We have the gay movement today. What is the gay movement? It's men lusting after men, women lusting after women. That's called inordinate affection. That's what the Bible calls here unnatural affection. It's not natural, according to God and the Bible and nature, for a man to want to do something with a man and vice versa with a woman. That's unnatural. It's against God and the Bible, because God said a man and a woman are to come together and be one flesh, not any other way. It says here, truce breakers. What is a truce breaker? Someone that breaks their promises. Someone that breaks a promise. You see, when I was raised up, I was taught a man is only as good as his word. If you gave somebody your word that you would do something, and you broke that promise, you were looked at as the worst person in the world, as a dishonorable, horrible person. But nowadays, people make a promise and then they break it and they don't care. Truce breakers. That's horrible. When you make a promise, the old days, if you shook hands with a guy and you made an agreement, that was binding. That was more binding than a contract and you signed your name to. You shook his hand, that meant the deal's done. I still do that today. If I go somewhere and I buy something, I say, hey man, thank you, and I shake their hand. I say, appreciate that. I still do that. That's hey, we shook hands on it. That's our agreement that we did this deal. False accusers. Now notice what it says there. False accuser. That's a liar. That's someone that accuses you of something that you have not done. That's what you call, what is the term that the psychologists use? Transference. Transference. Most of the time when somebody's evil, wicked, filthy, reprobate, ungodly, and they see you and you're doing wrong, it pricks their conscience. They don't like to see someone that's not as bad as them, so they'll always accuse you of, most of the time, the very thing that they themselves are guilty of. That's a psychological thing. So there's a lot of people that are false accusers. Incontinent. Incontinent means without self-control. One thing I was always taught as a kid is control yourself. Know how to control yourself. Don't do anything. Don't let your body get to a state where you're not in control anymore. But what happens? Today we live in a world where they push drugs on people. And they tell people, hey man, you ought to smoke this. You ought to freebase this. You ought to inject this. Take heroin. Take this. Take that. And what happens when you take drugs? You're out of your mind and you're not in control of your body. Drugs also are a gateway into allowing demons to come inside of you. Because drugs relax you to where you're not in control and something else can get inside of you. Watch out. Watch out. Fierce. What is fierce? It's angry. What is this crowd? The socialist crowd are the ones that walk through the streets and do all the rioting and they call it, oh, well, we're just protesting. But why do their protests always end in throwing garbage everywhere and breaking glass and burning things? Because they're angry. They're angry, fierce, evil people. Look at this. Despisers of those that are good, verse 3. They hate anyone that tries to live a holy, righteous life. They despise it. Verse 4, traitors. Oh boy, there's a good word. What is a traitor? A traitor is someone that does an act of treason. There are laws in the land. And when a person breaks those laws, they are becoming a traitor. You know what these people are right here, progressives? They hate the Constitution and they've been working for under 100 years to overthrow the Constitution. That is treason. That is a traitor to the country and to the law and the founding documents of America. Yet they just keep doing what they're doing and nobody says a word. That's a shame. Heady. What does heady mean? It means reckless. Have you ever been around a person that's just utterly reckless? You don't know what they're going to do? It's scary to be around a person like that because you don't know what they're going to do. I used to have friends when we were kids, and we'd go around, and they were kind of dumb, and sometimes they'd punch you for no reason, and just, hey man, why'd you do that? They were reckless. And as the days went on, and the older they got, the more reckless they become. They'd come over and just for no reason they'd punch you in the belly. And I finally said, man, I don't want friends like that. I want to be around friends that I can trust, and not just out of the blue for no reason they hurt me. And they're reckless and they do stupid things. High-minded. What does it mean to be high-minded? It means, hey, they think that they are smarter than everybody else. It says in verse 4, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. What does that mean? That means they're lewd, loose people that don't care about God. All they care about is feeling good. So what do? They fornicate, they adulterate, they do sinful acts. And they end up living only for the pleasure. And that usually takes them down the path to becoming homosexuals and drug addicts because they thought, oh man, drugs make me feel good. And they become people that have no control, and now they're a detriment to themselves and to others. When you get a person hooked on drugs and they become an addict, they're not under control. And there's no telling what they might do to themselves or to you. Such a person might be on drugs and then kill somebody. And then they'll argue, well, I was out of my mind. I didn't know what I was doing. Well, you shouldn't have gotten on drugs. Now that person's dead and it's your fault. So stay away from drugs. Stay away from those kind of things. Now verse 5. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. So the Bible tells me this group of people, this class of folks, I'm supposed to turn away from them. I'm supposed to get away from them. Because not only are they hurting themselves, they could hurt me. But how do I get away and turn away from such people if they're taking over the government? Then I have a problem. Now they're forcing down my throat their ideas that are against God and the Bible. Then I have a big problem. And what do they want to do? Well, they ultimately want me to be their slave. They want to enslave me to their system. What we're seeing in the world today is the rise of the New World Order, the Antichrist system, in which the New World Order is rising up through the United Nations. And the goal of the United Nations and the New World Order is that all people will be slaves to the Antichrist system. And they will all take a chip or all take the mark of the beast. And the devil wants all men on this earth to have his mark, proving that they are his slaves. And who are these people that are bringing in the Antichrist system? These right here. Yep. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. Of this sort, verse 6, are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts. This sort of people want to take captive or enslave others. This sort of people also always will resist the truth. Verse 8, they also resist the truth. Who is this sort? Well, that sounds like your modern day liberals. The liberals want to come into your house and take what's yours. Socialists, communists, they say, well, you don't deserve what you have. We need to take it and then distribute it to other people. No, 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 no. If it's mine, it's mine. You have no right to touch what's mine. But they say, no, you don't have a right to own anything. We just have to... It's ridiculous. God is a capitalist, by the way. God doesn't want someone to steal from someone to give to somebody else. Jesus said you're supposed to work for what you have. If you don't work, neither should you eat, Paul said. So verse 7 says, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Why? Why would a person always be learning but never able to come to the truth? Why would a person like that? Because such a person is blind. They are spiritually blind. Why would they be blind spiritually? Well, if they don't have a demon, if they do have a demon, that would explain why they were blind. But if they don't have a demon, they're living such a sinful life in the flesh that the last thing that they would ever care about would be the Spirit. And we read over here in 2 Corinthians that such people, the reason they're lost and the reason they're blind is because the god of this world, Satan, has blinded their eyes. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 3. 2 Corinthians 4:3, if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost. Verse 4, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. What these people need is the light of the gospel. And that's a good place to stop, right there. The gospel. What is the gospel? The gospel is 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4. The gospel is not do whatever the heck you want and live whatever kind of life you want. The gospel is realize you are a dirty, rotten, low-down, sorry, good-for-nothing sinner that deserves to burn in hell. And now come to Jesus Christ for salvation. That's what salvation is all about. So, ever learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Verse 8, now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, pseudo, these also resist truth, men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith. That says it all, doesn't it? They resist the truth. What is the truth? The gospel. So this crowd is lost. This is a lost people. And they need Jesus. And if they come to power, the first thing they will do is attack Jesus and God's people. Because this people is the people of Satan. This is the devil's people. And Christians are God's people. So it all goes back to the old thing. It's all the age-old battle of God versus Satan. Which side are you on? Well, I'm a Republican. Oh, no. It's not about whether you're Republican or Democrat. It's whether or not you've trusted the gospel and you're a true Christian that loves God and the Bible and is following it. Or if you're a lost person and you've joined with the devil and his institutions. That's what it's about. Verse 9 says, but they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. When will their folly, all their sins, be manifest to all men? The Bible says that after Armageddon, when Jesus comes back and rules for 1,000 years, all these people that were here taking the mark of the beast will be cast into hell. And after the 1,000 years of the millennium, God will bring them out of hell before the great white throne of judgment. And every sin they ever did will be shown to God. And they will see everything they've ever did as they're standing before God, and they're judged for every sin they've ever done. So their folly shall be manifest unto all men. The Bible says, be sure your sin will find you out. You're not going to get away with it. You might have done so many things in this world and you thought no one ever saw it. God did. Be sure your sin will find you out. You will give account of yourself to God someday. Everything you ever did, it's going to come out. You cannot hide your sin. So there it is. That's those people. And that's why I don't want to be in politics. I just want to live right and do right and see people get saved. I stay away from the politicians. I hope they stay away from me. I'm just trying to reach people for the spiritual life. I want them to go up to heaven and live a life with Jesus, not go to the other place and down there with the devil. So are you saved? If not, why don't you get saved? If you are saved, please go give the gospel, the light of the glorious gospel, to other people. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.